Alleluia. Om Mani Padme Om. Allah Satnam.
Welcome. You're watching Harmony in Diversity, and today we're speaking with Tommy Canning, a Christian contemporary sacred artist from the Catholic tradition. Thanks, Tommy. Last week we were talking about the image of divine mercy, and you were kind enough to describe some of the implications of it and the depth of the imagery, which sort of raises the question of transcendence, because that's what sacred art in part is to do, isn't it? Is to transcend. I think Pope Benedict had something to say about that. And
it's true, yeah. I could share a quote with you. It was a very interesting thing he said in regard to beauty in general and sacred art in particular. And this quote, which really spoke to me very much, is very profound words. And he said that beauty, whether that of the natural universe or that expressed in art, precisely because it opens up and broadens the horizons of human awareness, pointing us beyond ourselves to the abyss of infinity, can become a path towards the transcendent, towards the ultimate mystery, towards God. And I think that's, to me, is an idea of where the artist of sacred art, especially in the Catholic tradition which I belong, is called to, in that higher calling, to be a vessel or a signpost for that, to try and draw people closer to that ultimate mystery towards God. And that's the inspiration for me.
And I'm sure you're familiar with the fact that there's a lot of people, non-Catholics of course, who make commentary about the fact that a Catholic church will have lots of imagery within it. That actually addresses that as being it's a transcendent invitation to go beyond the image.
Even a beautiful sunset, a beautiful sunset or sunrise, or a landscape, a beautiful landscape that we can see, different seasons in the year. All of nature around us all speaks of that transcendent, something beyond this existence that we are aware of to the senses.
Yes. In fact, it points to the fact that all people are artists in one way or another, in their perception at least, of understanding. Do you, or in your association with other artists who are in the sacred tradition, what do you find the common ground? Is there any common ground between you when in your conversation, in your interpretation? What do you talk about?
I think even for artists who don't necessarily come at it from a purely religious perspective, you share that common desire to express the beauty of the world that you see around us, or a truth about that world around us, or the life that we have, or the lives that people have. And that seems to be something that many, even great filmmakers, you see many of the great films that depict all different aspects of humanity, from death to love to violence, to the whole human story is depicted through all of that, and in literature as well. On all these arts do in one shape or form, there's that connecting thing that we all share, and I've noticed that we all have in common. When you think about it, we call the arts and literature the humanities.
Yes.
Because it tells us something about what makes us human. So a life without some form of art is a life that is in some way, in some form of darkness, or is impoverished greatly, because it enriches and it informs us and shapes the way our lives, the direction it can go, for good or for bad, whatever way we look at it. And so That's why, you know, art is so important, and for all these different artists for different religious perspectives, or different artists of none even. But there's an intuition within them that it will take us beyond just this existence, this existential, you know, reality that we live in. We point us beyond something to something greater, and lift us, or even escape from our misery. Even if it does that, it's a form of escapism.
Yes.
It takes us out of the everyday humdrum through, you know, mere entertainment. You know, it can be a little break from the drudgery of everyday life and all the things that beset us. So art is in so many ways it's a way, or a gift that we're all given to enrich and enjoy life. How many people get excited when they hear about some new movie that's came out, or some new song, or performance or concert that they went to? These are all forms by which it makes life bearable, and gives us the will to live. You know, talking about, you know, having a will to live, you know, that is what the great thing about art can do.
Yes, and I think the fact that there are audiences for all of it indicates that it does speak to an innate part of all people, and they need to express it either through surrogacy or directly. So there's an immense power. And you referred to iconography there before. Have you had much to do with icons? Have you?
Oh yeah,
painted icons yourself?
you know, as an artist of more, you know, in my own particular area, it would be more in the Western tradition. You know, like if people are aware of the names of Michelangelo and Raphael, and there would be more in the Western tradition of sacred art. So I kind of follow in that tradition, being from the West, a child of the West. But you know, as you learn and you grow, you become aware of the great tradition of the iconography in the East, and how it's an ancient tradition that predates the Western Latin Church's tradition of great sacred art, and it has such a beautiful and rich, again, full of some symbolism, and very, again, with very particular conventions that must be adhered to in its execution. Oftentimes icons will be depicted with a gold surround of the image, usually depicting, you know, Christ or the Mother of God, or the Mother and Child, you know, the Blessed Virgin Mary with the infant Jesus, or saints. And the gold and the icons represents the divine realities which they are now living in.
Could I just interrupt you there, Tommy? Divine realities, time is a divine reality. So we'll be back. We'll be back in a moment.
Allah, Alleluia, Allah.
Welcome back. You're watching Harmony and Diversity, and we're speaking with Tommy Canning, and he's a contemporary sacred artist of the Catholic tradition. We were talking about icons before the break, Tommy. They actually are like a text, aren't they? They actually are read, more or less, an icon.
Yeah, the precise term for the icon is that the iconographer would write a sacred icon more than they would refer to it as a painting. It's a writing, because it essentially is the Word of God in a pictorial form, and it's done with very, as I say, very particular rubrics that must be adhered to for it to be an icon. And you know, there's all those rules are generally followed. And a painter or a writer of icons would be someone who would pray and fast in that process of writing the icon, and it would be a very prayerful and meditative process of creation. And again, it is the pinnacle of sacred art, because the artist of sacred art is called, in the Catholic tradition and the tradition of Christianity from the ancient times, is called to a sacred ministry within the church, in a strict sense of that word, because he's imparting through those images. Icons are referred to as sometimes a doorway or a window into heaven. And so they help facilitate the person contemplating the divine realities which we believe exist beyond this physical realm and the afterlife in heaven. They are a window into that place. And so it also requires a certain fasting of the eyes, because the images don't depict a very sensual or naturalism or realism, which we see more in the Western tradition of art. The icons have a very particular look upon the physical, aesthetic look of the figures and faces. Oftentimes, in fact, most times, the icons will have direct eye contact with the viewer. The eyes of the icon are looking directly towards the viewer, but also at the same time they look as if they are gazing beyond, again, to the eternal realities that they are existing within. Whether it's the saints or a divine personage like God the Father, the Holy Spirit, Jesus, the Holy Trinity, the Mother of God. So they have very beautiful and very simple and yet very theologically sound. They help reinforce the doctrine and the theology of what the church teaches and what the Gospels pertain to in the sacred scriptures. And it is the pinnacle of great sacred art, because it is the most ancient. And a great thing that I read one time regarding all of that was by the great Carmelite saint of the 20th century, Blessed Edith Stein, who was the Carmelite nun who died in the concentration camps of Auschwitz. And she wrote about St. John of the Cross being not only a disciple of the Lord, but also as a sacred artist. And she quoted him as saying that a sacred artist cannot be satisfied with painting merely a religiously successful image and concluded that he's fulfilled his mission. But the artist of sacred art must also be equally open to God making something of the material of the artist's own life. So he's really calling for something deeper of the artist of sacred art to be called to.
How does that resonate with you in your experience? You must be very familiar with that process.
In one sense, you feel like, you may as well quit. Nobody can really, no eye, no ear has heard, no eye has seen. As St. Paul said, who can anyone really depict? And that's why we know in other religious traditions that that is forbidden, because that's the idea that which mortal can really convey God or the truth of divinity by mere human hands. But we believe in our own tradition as Catholics that Christ came, he is the incarnation, he became flesh and dwelled amongst us. Therefore, we take our cue from that truth, that he became physical, he took on the form for the senses, so that we could see and feel and touch this divine reality. God himself became man and dwelled amongst us. He condescended to give his own life on the cross for our sake. And so that from that we then take, that's where really the church's understanding of why we have sacred art, why we have images, is to depict those realities of the incarnation, because we believe that God is not remote and distant, but is intimately concerned with the affairs of each and every one of us, and collectively as well. And so we try to depict those realities as we see them, as best we can, with the limitations that we have.
Yes. It's obvious that to be a free sacred artist, it would be best to be a Christian sacred artist because there's more opportunity to depict the whole subject apart from the face of God, that is.
Of course, yeah. It's limitless, really, when you explore all the various facets. It's like looking at a beautiful crystal with the light shining through it, and you get myriads of colours and facets. It's just it's an inexhaustible. We can never really exhaust it in this life. No. Many artists have tried to do as much as they can to explore and depict all the aspects of the faith which we profess. But even there, you can't really exhaust the subject. It's limitless.
It's as infinite as God, and time isn't infinite, unfortunately. Stay with us. We'll be back after the break. Welcome back. You're watching Harmony in Diversity, and we're speaking with Tommy Canning. He's a Christian contemporary sacred artist of the Catholic tradition. Tommy, in doing a little bit of research on this, I came across some articles which were bemoaning the fact that sacred art had taken a major dive, and you would find plaster of Paris Jesus and all sorts of things in churches. What's your view of that?
Yeah, this is something that has, in my own study and understanding and research and growth of knowledge of the subject that I've been working within, it's something that very gradually happened over many decades and maybe over the period of 100 years, and sort of mirrors what was going on and culturally as well in the world. But really, it has been an unfortunate thing. You could really trace it back to far back as the period of the Industrial Revolution, and with the ability to mass produce objects. The church at times often get caught into the machinery of buying off the shelf works of statuary and paintings and imagery, as opposed to commissioning great works of art. And that's the thing about great works of art, the great beauty or the significance of Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel, for example, is that it is a one-off work of art. It's not a replica, it's not a duplication of anything else. It is a one-off piece of art, and that's the power in which it lies. Much of the power is because of that uniqueness of it. And this was a great tradition the church had for centuries. It was at one time known as the greatest patron of the arts. If artists wanted to enjoy being commissioned as artists and have much work to do, they could rely on the church for that support and encouragement, and they were given prime place in the church. Sadly, in the modern era, this is, again, going back to from the period of the Industrial Revolution and the aftermath, which saw a decline in the commissioning of sacred works of art. And really, it's something that was called for within the documents of the Second Vatican Council during the 1960s, which, under the document called Sacrosanctum Concilium, there was a paragraph which actually called for academies of sacred art to be established within every diocese, and the bishop to oversee the training and formation of artists to be essential in the work of evangelization, the mission of the church, to beautify and enhance the diocese and the churches within that. And they were very, very encouraging and exhorted the church to really take advantage of the talents, the creative talents at the local level, but give them the formation in the sacred arts to best serve their particular diocese. Now, obviously, there's practical considerations for all of that, but nevertheless, it's there, and it's something that's never really been implemented, which is a great, for me, it's a sad indictment on where we're at as a body of believers, that we oftentimes will pay hand over fist and invest a lot of money in areas which really, you could argue whether that they really do benefit or enhance the common good. We'll pay all kinds of money for, to beautify all kinds of things and places.
Yes.
But oftentimes within the church it's neglected or overlooked, or sometimes seen as a luxury we can no longer afford, that it was somehow necessary for those people back in the day who were illiterate and weren't able to read and write, and it was a way of communicating the truths or simplicity in a way through images that we no longer need. We're somehow more advanced, but I don't think we're ever advanced to the point of advanced beyond the need for art. Again, as I said earlier, it takes us back to what makes us human.
Yes.
And I think when we see bad art in churches or in places of worship, it's a reflection of us ourselves that we don't value and appreciate, and should encourage these talented individuals to find that vocation within their own communities and not be off working for media and other places out in the world, which is good and fine. We need people in all areas of society, but oftentimes many people who would be able to serve the church through their talents are having to find many other ways to earn a living and use those talents, and sometimes they're taken away from the belief in the faith, because the spirit of the world can sometimes have a powerful pull on their direction in life. So it's something we really neglected.
It is, isn't it? It sort of says that there's been a bit of a decline in the desire for transcendence, or the awareness of transcendency.
Yep, and Michelangelo, the great artist of the Renaissance, the Sistine Chapel, himself said it's not enough that we merely imitate the masters of old. He said we must seek to surpass them. And we've so advanced technologically in many other ways in the world today, and yet why are we not producing these great artists like Michelangelo in the contemporary world? Where are they? Where are they today? Is there such an absence? And why isn't there being an effort to encourage these artists to find a place within the church once again? And I think that would help inspire and draw people to that which they depict, because these images in these great cathedrals and basilicas are centres of tourism, centres of pilgrimage. Because people love to see the beauty. They love to see beautiful, and it can often be a moment of conversion for many people.
Well, it was for you in a way, wasn't it?
Yeah, and if nothing else, it makes life that bit more bearable, that bit more beautiful. Beauty, as I said before, as Pope Benedict said, beauty, whether that of the natural universe or that that we see created, can be a pathway towards the transcendent, towards the ultimate mystery, and towards God.
Tommy, thank you. Our time has expired, but thank you for that brilliant elucidation of those transcendent elements of the Catholic faith and art in its connection.
Thank you, Norm.
Thank you for watching, and we'll be back next week.
Baha'u'llah, Shanti Om, Allahu